the Applied AI Podcast, where tech meets ROI.
I'm here with my technical co-founder of Talbot West, Steve Karafiath, who he and I were building Talbot West together, having a lot of fun doing it, serving clients in the middle market and enterprise. And Steve's really well positioned to discuss the both challenges and opportunities around AI implementations and the efficiencies AI can drive. So I'm very excited for him to be on the podcast today. Steve, why don't you introduce yourself quickly to our audience?
Awesome, thanks. And we really are having a lot of fun doing it. And I'm looking forward to seeing where we take this podcast. But as Jacob said, I'm the technical co-founder of Talbot West. I've got a 30-year history in enterprise software between GE, led the developer innovations team at Oracle. Honestly, those big guys aren't innovating nearly fast enough. Left to found my own AI SaaS startup. Realized consulting is really where my heart is, and Jacob convinced me to come over here, and we've been off to the races ever since.
Yeah, and I just want to put a finer point on something you said there that, at Oracle, you had access to a massive team and a lot of resources, and you were serving Fortune 500 clients, getting paid very well. So, in many senses, you had it made, but yet you weren't totally satisfied. And I think it had something to do with the rate of innovation. You want to say a little more about that?
Yeah, it was wild. I mean, we had, hundreds of engineers, and we're sitting on NVIDIA compute coming out the ears. Like it wasn't being used quite as much for crypto mining anyway anymore. And I'm coming to management saying, look, LLMs are the future. This is about 5 years ago before most people have heard of OpenAI. And they were just totally uh, head set on deterministic chatbots because that's what we sold. And it's just wild that they didn't see the writing on the wall. And now, like, they lucked into reselling all this NVIDIA compute to other competitors. So it's just been interesting to see how not quickly the big guys have been able to innovate.
Yeah, which is why what we're doing now is so cool, right? We're innovating like crazy, and nothing's holding us back.
Exactly. I think bringing that same model you were talking about that we used to bring to the kind of Fortune 500 customers to the mid market has been, really, I'd say satisfying to me because we are helping real people and helping them a lot faster than some of those long drawn out, inefficient enterprise cycles.
Yeah. And something you just said about LLMs and how Oracle was slow to recognize the potential of them. It seems like we're caught in a weird, almost like dichotomy today, where for mainstream society, they almost equate AI to LLMs. They almost talk about those as though they're synonymous. And then you have others that, are, like you say, slow to adopt the power of LLMs, large language models. And so it there is this weird thing going on where large language models have so much potential. They do open up totally new frontiers, but yet they also have a ton of limitations. And there are all these types of AI that have been around forever that mainstream society almost ignores or glosses over or isn't even aware they exist. So we're in this weird thing where it seems like there's a need for a lot of clarity around exactly what LLMs are, the cool new capabilities they do open up, and also the shortcomings and where you need some of these other capabilities that have been around forever.
Yeah, I think you described that really well because I don't want to minimize how revolutionary LLMs are in that now the machines speak the human language. Like instead of us having to speak their language, they speak ours. And when you really think about the ramifications of that, they're very far reaching. Also, like you're saying, 10, 20 years ago, even we were doing predictive analytics on fraud detection for the US Postal Service or for some of the major credit card companies. And as you guys well know, it's been over a decade that you'd get an alert if you try to swipe your card somewhere that's out. And all of those are machine learning algorithms. I think 8 years ago, go ahead.
Oh, which I was going to say, which is a subset of AI, right? And you have like the Spotify algorithms and the Netflix algorithms. Those are all subsets of AI, right?
100%. And I think one thing, because LLMs are the new thing and they are revolutionary, people equate LLMs to AI when really, 8 years ago, during doing a predictive sales analytics for a major media company, at Oracle, we were doing essentially Bayesian inference algorithms, the machine learning, having nothing to do with large language models. And in many ways, those models are still superior for highly deterministic, highly mathematical, quantitative models. And everyone these days seems to be trying to slap an LLM on. So it's really the hybrid. And, I think you could probably talk a little bit about how we see the orchestration layers coming together with chai architecture.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think for our listeners, we should clarify that at Talbot West, we've pioneered this ensemble approach of composable AI where, it's very modular. We're building the exact set of capabilities we need, where you can pair LLMs with some of these other capabilities and orchestrate them together. We've decided to call it cognitive hive AI, which we abbreviate CHAI. So that's the CHAI architecture you just referred to. And we're finding a lot of success. Now, of course, that's a lot more of a heavy lift in terms of an implementation. So we're not just saying that that's the solution for everything, right? Because there's a ton of things where an LLM can solve a use case perfectly fine.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think leveraging wisdom of crowds and the differing skill sets of different components with LLM just being one has really proven for a lot of our customers to be much greater than the sum of its parts. And so, even if it is an LLM that's kind of orchestrating or quarterbacking this whole thing, to be able to have, in the industry parlance, they've started calling these things agents. Even though we had other terms for them before that stuff came out, so don't want to get caught up in the labels, but really having almost like a team of specialists, but each one of them is either AI or machine learning or a large language model, and having them work together can really help to reduce hallucinations or get multiple opinions and select from the best one. And still having humans in the loop to make sure that nothing's going off the rails because we know how dangerous that can be.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point because when you're creating these ensembles, they can be ensembles of multiple diverse capabilities. Let's say a Bayesian inference engine, paired with a large language model, paired with something else, or they can be multiple of the same type, so multiple large language models, and you can actually get far higher performance and accuracy by even if you have like a team of diverse large language models. They're all large language models, but they're working together, or they're even working antagonistically. By just breaking a task down into these subcomponents and having a team, as you say, you can get them to perform far better.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're touching on right now is another thing that we were working on before it had a name. Now everybody will call it reinforcement learning, but it's the same thing as almost like the free market economy will perform, and the things that are most efficient will rise to the top. Applying that same model to an orchestration layer of multiple AI and machine learning algorithms really real yields some interesting results in the same way that kind of evolution allows the particular components that outcompete to have more resources and continue to thrive. In
Yeah,
fact,
absolutely.
you've had some really interesting kind of analogies that tie together biomimicry and the kind of biology side to AI that have really informed some of the architectures that I've designed technically. It might be interesting to talk about one or two of those, if any jump in mind.
Yeah, are you talking about the beehive thing and how we've
You know
used
it. The waggle dance. Let's go.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. So when I was at the University of Utah, a professor came through who was a world-renowned expert on bees and honeybee behavior. I don't remember his name right now. I can find that and post it in the show notes. But he came through and gave a lecture, and I was blown away by that. And I thought, somewhere in my life, I'm going to use this. It's going to come into use. It's going to come into play. And so when we started, exploring this ensemble approach to solving real world challenges with I thought of the beehive waggle dance that this professor talked about. And so what that is essentially is um, when bees need to migrate, they'll send out scouts, and these scouts will go out to all different directions to find a new home. And they'll come back and they will signal both the direction of the home and its distance with a type of dance. So the dance actually can signify both a distance pretty precisely, and a specific direction. And it's crazy that the accuracy of signaling a location with a dance, but essentially, and then they'll also signal with a dance intensity how desirable the location is. So think of a rating from 1 to 10, and if it's like a semi-enthusiastic dance, the location might be a 4. If it's super enthusiastic, it might be a 9. And anyway, other bees then go out and they assess these different potential locations, and they come back and they essentially add their vote. And so there might be multiple competing locations, and there might be one group of bees, dancing over here saying, yes, this north 17 degrees, 300 meters away, and another group, signaling some other location. But eventually, as they all go explore all the locations and add their dance, they all eventually converge on one location. So it is this wisdom of crowds, exactly as you said. So it's really, really cool. And it's a model for distributed intelligence as opposed to centralized.
Yeah, I mean, it's always blows my mind how your research into the kind of biology of bees has really informed some of the architecture that we've built. Like you were mentioning, cognitive hive AI and having, for a really complicated, business problem where there may be so many different options and ways to go to have multiple different components that are of different types. All getting a vote and then having kind of a centralized queen bee controller that's receiving all of that information. And like you were saying too, it's not always cooperative. Sometimes it can be antagonistic, like a module that says to the, like you get your first pass at the result and you have a module that's the interrogator that says, I think you're hallucinating. Prove to me that you're not. Where are your sources? And I'm going to double check them, and we found with that, that even though, you get not always 100% accurate results out of a first pass of a default um, LLM, we can really increase the accuracy with some of these multiple layer passes as well as these orchestrations, which leads me to something I think our viewers would be interested in. You've been beating the drum on a 5-year thesis for a while now. We've renamed it to the 2030 thesis because we're already almost a year in, and the information and the kind of predictions are already coming to pass. Do you want to talk a little bit about kind of how we see the landscape forming over the next 5 years, or a little less than that now?
Yeah. So I mean, who knows if the exact timing is going to be right or not? It's the thesis itself. So even if it ends up being 2028, 2034, right, is sort of irrelevant. But we do call it our 2030 thesis because that's a good round number. And the thesis essentially says that in 2030, organizations that are still in existence and competitive, if they have any scale, will be AI enabled end to end in a totally integrated manner. And why don't you talk a little bit about what we mean when we say a totally integrated manner? I mean, compare it
Absolutely.
to what we have. Compare it to what we have right now.
Exactly. So, I've spent decades doing big implementations for customers, a holistic view of everything from ERPs to CRMs, and needing to build dashboards. And like having a single source of truth for data and being able to get real time visibility into your business processes, that idea has been around for decades. And now, though, we have this opportunity to actually have a lot of the busy work done by the computers that humans used to have to do. I mean, a lot of these kind of manual labor, but we kind of needed human intelligence, are now able to be done automatically by the computers. So, um, almost imagining a central nervous system where the central controller or brainstem is able to go out to each one of these components, and whether that's real-time data from IoT devices, whether that's integrations that either already exist or need to be built into some of your back-end business systems, and then also whether that's all of the documentation, standard operating procedures, basically everything you need to train all of your employees in to get a centralized controller trained on that. That's kind of some of the technical wiring behind it, but can you talk a little bit more about what the business implications would be of a totally AI enabled business?
Yeah, I almost think of it as this sci-fi thing, but it's going to be a reality, regardless of the timing. It's going to be a reality. So in sci-fi often you have these spaceships that have an intelligence. The people can talk directly to the spaceship and it can know what's happening with like its engines, or it can report, engine 2 down, or engine 2 at 60%. And it actually knows what's happening with all of its different components. And so imagine a future in which a company has its own intelligence that's so wired, as you said, a central nervous system where nerves are extending through every aspect of the business. And you can literally ask this central console, like, sales are dropping, for this product line, try to figure out why that might be, find some correlations. And it goes and like finds, like, oh well, we replaced this supplier and the quality was lower, we've reported customer complaints since replacing this one supplier, or whatever, right? The fact that you have this central console and it's wired into all aspects of your business is just amazing. I mean, the consequences and ramifications of that are going to be huge, right?
Absolutely. And I think there's an interesting segue there because once you have something plugged in that deeply, a lot of people think, oh, in these space movies, you talk about like what's going to happen when that computer decides to lock everybody out of the airlock and not let them back in, or oh, there was a bug in the software. These are real concerns and they're fun to joke about, but also, the security risks that have existed around IT infrastructure are already one of the biggest risks to customers. You see data leaks literally putting big businesses out of business. So it might be a good time to talk a little bit about some of the risks and how you see that kind of unfolding over the next 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the security concerns are a whole big topic on their own, right? And it seems like I mean, you can really speak to those, but it seems like people are either overly concerned about a lot of this, or there are things they're actually not paying attention to that they should
Right?
be.
Like
Um,
you have these people on one side that are saying, "Oh my God, like AGI is going to be here next week, and like we all need to start worshiping it because everything is just going to totally change within the next month." And like honestly, anybody who's selling you that like you're going to have this total organizational intelligence immediately with no human oversight, like in my opinion, that's just blowing smoke up your ass. But then on the other side of things, you've got these people that are naysayers. Either this thing's just like a hype bubble that's going to explode and there's nothing to it, like it's just a flash in the pan. How would you talk to business owners and CEOs day in, day out. So, how do you advise them to find clarity amongst these just massive different extremes of, excuse my parlance, bullshit?
yeah. So yeah, bringing clarity is super important because I mean, I would say, as you and I doing, Talbot West and serving clients, like one of the big deliverables they need is clarity. I mean, obviously we're doing a lot of other things besides that, right? But I would say that's that's one of the most valuable things because these business executives are just getting hit with so much hype on the one hand, so much doom and gloom and naysaying on the other. People showing them that like large language models are just garbage because they hallucinate. People claiming that like AGI is practically here, as you said. And then they also, what we're seeing is these business executives, in addition to just getting hit with a fire hose of information, misinformation, they also just don't even know where to start, right? They are like, well, should I do a chat bot for customer service? If so, which one? Or should I start over here with my supply chain? I know I've got a lot of inefficiency in my supply chain. What type of solution would I even plug in? Would I have to build my own? Is there something on the market that would work? So they don't even know where to start, right? There's just like literally 100 things they could start on, and they don't even know which one to start on.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. It's reminding me too of kind of we were talking about this whole organizational intelligence, and right now you get a lot of kind of siloed standalone SaaS products that can solve a particular problem. And honestly, like because LLMs are so good at doing certain things, I mean, some of those can increase your efficiency 90% in a very narrow area. But can you talk to a little bit about kind of the dangers of just willy-nilly plugging in a bunch of these siloed SaaS products and what that might lead to?
Yeah, yeah, and also going back to something you said about the sci-fi thing where the where the ship takes over and locks people out. I mean, obviously, with that, we can build in a lot of human, human in the loop precautions, a lot of user controls, and all of that. So I want to get back to that. So maybe after I finish this current thought, let's circle back to that and have you talk about proper precautions too. It's not so much that we're worried about AI taking over, because I think that's a little bit in the realm of fantasy. But there are legitimate concerns around data controls, privacy, security, and all that. So I actually want to return to that conversation.
Okay.
But yeah, to your point, if you're plugging in all these siloed solutions, you can get some localized gains, but it's not really moving you closer to this vision of total organizational intelligence, which we're so sure is the future. Let me, as a segue, talk about why we're so sure. There's really two reasons, and this is based on evolutionary theory. Um, One, it's going to be absolutely technologically feasible to have this total organizational intelligence. And two, it will give companies that have it such a tremendous advantage over others. You put those two things together, and you're practically an inevitability that this is going to happen, right? And so when possible, we want to have our clients start architecting their solutions in a way that's more interoperable, modular, and growing them towards this future. Obviously, we're not ever telling them go try to build it today, but if they can create little localized versions of that. So for example, if they deploy, say, a customer service chatbot that's actually really integrated with another knowledge management system that's all their standardized SOPs, and all of that, right? And the two of them are actually integrated together as a larger system. Well, in a local sense, they've already got a little miniature version of this total organizational intelligence just for these few areas. And then if they start integrating other areas, they're growing towards that. And this is pretty doable. So one of the challenges of just plugging in a bunch of SaaS products that are totally siloed from each other is you're not getting any closer to this vision. We're never steering people away from that, but we are always weighing the trade-offs of, okay, you could plug in this SaaS product that's going to be totally siloed, but it's going to give you pretty significant ROI. Or you could go this other way. Maybe there are some trade-offs. You could go this other way where you do this other solution and plug it in together with some of these other systems, and now you're getting closer to total organizational intelligence, which is what I think you were just kind of hinting
Yeah.
at.
And I promise we'll get back to the security and the spaceship killing everybody. But something you just said reminded me of just how hard it is for most businesses to even know where to aim when they are want to do, even if they know they want to do a siloed implementation or two, or just bite off some low-hanging fruit, like they don't even know where the fruit is most of the time. So can you talk for a little bit about like the process that business owners can go through to go from just I'm totally overwhelmed by the hype of everything. I can't keep up with all of the changes in this landscape. I feel like I'm behind and just treading water, to having some clarity, as we were talking about like a direction to start moving, so maybe they can end up closer to this total organizational intelligence by 2030.
Yeah, so we take them, if executives are not quite sure where to start and they're facing this overwhelm, we take them through a process that, you know, I've developed, and you're now part of it too, but we call it Apex AI prioritization and execution. And essentially that's a process where we map all the different things they could be pursuing, and we map them across 5 criteria that really matter. Um, I guess I'll rattle. Do you think I should rattle those off? Uh,
Absolutely.
okay. I don't know how in the weeds to get on this, but let's go for it. So the 5 criteria that really matter that we have to evaluate all these initiatives are cost, obviously, and that's not just money. That's also time and other types of resources. Um, Synergies with other types of things they're doing, and this is the one that like applies to total organizational intelligence. So is it moving them closer to that? Is it overlapping with some other things and kind of wiring in, or is it a totally siloed initiative that's going to be growing separately? The squeaky wheel syndrome, in other words, how painful is this for people in the company? How bad do they want it solved? That's important to consider, and it's not the only consideration, obviously. um, projected ROI on the bottom line, and we can project this pretty accurately, like how much is this going to move the needle for what actually matters, which is revenue and profitability, right? And then there was a fifth, and I might it's slipping my mind right now. Do you remember what the fifth was?
I don't off the top of my head, but we'll put it in the show notes, and probably a good time to segue back to one of the other things that we surface in the report is around security, risk management, all of the ways that kind of people need to be aware of the potential pitfalls of decisions that either they're currently making or that they're about to make. So I was also noticing that when you do thumbs up, you get like an emoji. I was hoping that that would happen.
That's cool.
As yeah, as far as security goes, can you be a little bit more specific about what you'd like me to delve into? Because there's so much around it.
Yeah, I mean, we could spend hours just talking about security, but maybe just a quick dive into what are people overly concerned about, but maybe they should relax a little bit on, and then what are they blind to that they are just leaving gaping security vulnerabilities they're not considering that they should be. Or I guess let me put it this way: when you go in to advise a Talbot West client on these security issues, what are the main things you're flagging for them or bringing their attention to? Either on either side, either hey, don't be as concerned about this that you're totally concerned about, or be more concerned about that.
Oh, that's a great one. I love it. So you hear a lot of talk about, oh my goodness, the AI is hallucinating, they're wrong, and they just make stuff up, and they'll cite fake research, and that they'll put case numbers in law that don't even exist. And all of that is true. But you know what else is unreliable? All of your human employees. So the catastrophizing of that AIs hallucinate, they can't be used for business, would be the same as saying, look, your employees make mistakes, so you can't use them for business. And it's like, no, the key is to have a process in place that accounts for the fallibility of both your employees and AI. And in some ways, like they're fallible in different ways. So if you just try to treat your AI like employees, it's going to surprise you in some ways that it really falls down. But also, they are far less fallible than employees in some other metrics. So the key that I try to urge people that are kind of catastrophizing that these things are hallucinating is yes, assume that everything that they're producing might have some errors in it. And like we were talking about with orchestration models or other things, like double check that. And then just like your employee, especially if it's a junior coder, might need a senior coder to do code review. I'm involved in that on a weekly basis. We do the same thing with AI, and we build the business process so that it's okay. And then I
Yeah, and
also go ahead.
yeah, and that's a lot around keeping AI sort of on the straight and narrow with the reliability aspect. But there's also a lot around like data security, privacy, and all that. Like, we're advising a manufacturing client right now around some of these things involving access controls and other things like that. And so there's a lot of talk right now about, is it okay to upload sensitive data to large language models, or isn't it? There's work being done around that. Some people are not at all concerned about that. Some people are. I guess maybe just talk a little around some of these issues around data privacy, security, data leakage, hacks. All of that kind of at a high level. How are you advising Talbot West clients to proceed with some of this stuff?
I love that. Well, it really boils down to two factors. And the first one is starting to realize all of the hierarchy of your data, from stuff that's publicly available on your website to stuff that may be available to every employee who can VPN to your intranet, to maybe now you're into your CRM system and there's some customer data, but it's not actually PII, like identifiable data. And then you get into like credit card numbers, social security numbers, the stuff that really needs to be secure. That stuff needs to be encrypted at rest. And so identifying the hierarchy of those things and realizing that anything that's publicly available, there's very little risk to load into um, an LLM. And then you start to have a little increase of risk if it's available to every one of your 10,000 employees. Like, it's probably not super secure, but start thinking about it. And this brings me to kind of the second piece, because they weave together, is really identifying the roles and responsibilities of each individual employee or AI system in your company, and making sure that they only have access to the data that they need to do their jobs, and also putting perhaps some reporting, and also kind of AI overview of, um, of making sure that they're not executing a phenomenally large amount of requests per second, or in the case of one that um, we were brought to our attention recently, Microsoft Copilot is able to access uh, customer information through a CRM records. Well, at the DEF CON conference, they were able to demonstrate that with the right amount of prompt engineering, or should I say wrong, that Copilot instance was able to dump pretty much the entirety of the data that's included in CRM. So it does get sticky. Of you might want an AI agent to have access to a particular record, but maybe not all of the records at the same time, or maybe not 1,000 records per second. And those aren't new issues. Those are the same issues that have existed for all of these data leaks and hacks that have destroyed companies, but they're far more under the microscope. So honestly, it's not so much doom and gloom, like we can't solve this, as we have to be very intentional about making sure that authorization and authentication are rock solid, and that all of the business processes are mapped, and that everything only has access to execute what it should be executing.
Yeah, there's just so much nuance to it, right? It's very specific to a given company. It's specific to each data type. It's specific to each system and each employee. I like how you said, both employees and AI systems have to be kind of given the right access controls in the right way. I mean, there's a lot to it, and that's why. I mean, we've positioned Talbot West as a very customized service provider. It's not a one size fits all. And when we engage with a client, we're going very, very deep into all of these nuances, right?
It is, right? And neither extreme, I've learned, is usually the answer in life. And where we're advising our customers is to try to say, be really intentional about not having any customer data, PII. Certainly, if you're in healthcare, like anything HIPAA related, any of that, like probably not the low hanging fruit to start feeding into AI anytime soon. Um, Also, there's a ton of data that might be a little bit more sensitive than your publicly available data. Um, it might be stuff that your employees are referencing on the daily. It might be, products, data sheets, those sorts of things. And that stuff is extremely ripe, or with the right access controls, to remove so much busy work on the back end of your company, things that people have been copying and pasting and getting carpal tunnel for years on, things where you might be able to generate a new report or proposal with literally 5 to 10% of the effort that you used to. And to not explore those use cases out of, in my opinion, an overblown concern of what it would look like if some of that data were to be accidentally leaked or trained on, like you'd really be hamstringing yourself in terms of efficiency. So it's
Yeah,
always a trade-off.
now you're getting into one of my pet peeves, and I've promised our listeners that this is a podcast about applied AI. This is about how to solve real world problems. We're not going to get into all these other issues, but just indulge me for a sec. That all these people on LinkedIn wanting to naysay that AI is a bubble. I mean, it's like, are they not aware of the massive efficiencies, the massive low hanging fruit? And yes, of course, there are all these places AI falls flat, but like, come on. I mean, are you serious?
It's wild, right? I mean, I can rattle off the top of my head things that we've done for customers where it's, hey, in order to get revenue into our company, we have to create proposals to respond to RFPs. And it used to take us 3 weeks to do this. And now it takes us one day. And it's
Yeah.
like the to bury your head in the sand about the order of magnitude of efficiency that some of those things can create is phenomenal. And I'm not saying you need to put a chat bot talking to your customers and like risk doing a bunch of those things, but especially on some of these back office automations, it's like it's wild. I think those people just must not live and breathe that stuff every day like we do, because otherwise they'd be singing a different tune.
Yeah, it just makes me wonder what planet they're actually living on. Like, do they even know what AI is, or what these technologies can do?
Right? I'll put it this way. Like all the universities across the country are in turmoil because any type of homework they try to give their students, like the AI just does it for them and does it well enough that they like get an A on their grade. And it's like you think that business is so different then like the university, it's the same thing. Like do this thing and get it evaluated and get this grade. And so it's just wild that that people can't see that. And I don't want to minimize the risks. Like it's a brave new world. It's like the Wild West out there right now. There's a lot of ways that things can go awry really quickly, but to think that there's not just massive efficiency gains waiting for anybody who's willing to go through a process like you were kind of laying out is that's just la la land.
Yeah, and then you get the other extreme where these AI hype people, and usually they're talking about AI as though they're just reselling some kind of large language model solution, and they're talking about it as though their large language model solution is synonymous with AI. Kind of ignoring the diversity of different technologies that are under the label of AI, and so they come across as fairly clueless, but they're just out there hyping like AI is going to totally change your company, and it's practically AGI. And I think usually, they certainly don't have the depth of like uh, full stack technology experience that you bring from Oracle with all of the different machine learning and stuff, and the nuances of what it actually can and can't do. And they just come across, so they're almost like the flip side of the people who say AI is a bubble, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think you really see kind of the lack of experience and depth in the industry with people that have this simplistic view of like AI will just instantly solve everything because though AI could help with every part of this process, like it still boils down to making sure that all of the business processes, all of the inputs and outputs are well understood, and then really evaluating realistically who's best suited at doing this particular task. And in some cases, that's humans. In some cases, that's large language models. In some cases, that's these Bayesian inference algorithms, machine learning. There's a bunch of different things to choose from. And listen, I live and breathe this stuff every day, and there is still a lot of room for every single one of those working together to produce something. And anybody saying that, like, no, it's just one, all we need is AI, or all we need is humans, and we don't need any AI, like, they just welcome to the party, guys, because it's a brave new world out here, and all of those are going to be working together to drive business efficiencies.
Yeah, and I think you've just touched on one of our core working theses, which is for the foreseeable future, it is about AI and humans teaming, and it's about finding the aspects AI can do really well, the aspects humans can do really well. So I don't think we're ever recommending, I don't think there's ever a scenario where maybe you can correct me, maybe you can think of one where we're 100% recommending that AI do all of a certain process and humans just aren't involved at all. Depending on the process, the balance can be different, right? Certain processes it might be 80% AI, 20% human. On some other process, that might be flipped, and AI can only do about 20% of it. And you still need that 80% human. And of course, it's always a moving target. But we don't foresee a future anytime in the near future when it's 100% AI for really anything, do we?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I think the key is like this is a sliding scale and it will continue to move over this kind of 5 year thesis that you laid out. But um, the set of things that the machines can do is bigger now, but also they can make mistakes and they need a lot of oversight and all of this. And so figuring out the right sweet spot between making sure that humans are both well trained as well as able to do the things that humans do so much better than AI right now, which is still a large set of things. Like it might keep getting smaller. And I'm not saying we'll never get to AGI, it's just not on the doorstep. And so, really finding that sweet spot between putting kind of humans to use in the most effective way possible, letting them supervise, letting them do the things that the machines are not that great at doing, but really putting metrics around what these AI ensembles are producing so that they can get graded, they can get reports, we can see through the audit logs and everything, what are they accessing? And then slowly, as they've proven themselves, those windows will continue to shift, and that just drives bigger and bigger efficiencies for our customers.
Yeah, and there are certain things humans will, I think, always be better than AI at. And one of those things happens to be human relationships. And because business involves human relationships, that's one area where, as AI is taking humans out of a lot of these repetitive, boring tasks they'd rather not be doing anyway, they can focus more on the relationship heavy side of business. as well as a lot of the oversight that they still need to be doing over the AI systems and that sort of thing.
Right. Couldn't agree more. Well said, and looking forward to seeing how our customers react to some of the podcast stuff that we're recording.
Awesome. Well, that should do it for this episode. It's been a great discussion.
It has, yeah. Appreciate everyone bearing with me. I lost my voice doing some enthusiastic breath work last night, and looking forward to coming back and recording some more of these, maybe when my voice is back.
Awesome.
Hey, take care, guys.